thank you so much for joining me here. This is really kind of a first video podcast, as we both know from having played around with settings here a little bit, for Two Rivers BizStarts. And so BizStarts is part of Two Rivers BizStarts is part of BizStarts, which is a 501c3 based out of Milwaukee, and is dedicated to promoting the growth of small business and entrepreneurship, throughout the state of Wisconsin. So when I learned that you were the creator of Field to Freezer, which is one of the great success stories of the state here, you're listed as a top 20 of Wisconsin innovators. We'll get into that a little bit.
Sure.
I just wanted the chance to get you on video and kind of talk a little bit about your idea and entrepreneurship and sort of how you came up with the concept and go from there. So thanks for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. As you know, I'm founder of Lannex. We're a 21-year-old software development company. And as you get into the startup community, you find out things work a lot differently. So a lot of people have great ideas, and lots of people don't have much money. So, the way that, people try to, tie things together with duct tape and baling wire and everything's fairly interesting. But we had just graduated from gBeta in December, and one of the slogans they had was "Fake it till you make it." So, so we've learned to do a little bit of that, and anyway, it's been interesting. In the case of Field to Freezer, it was an idea kind of born out of frustration that I had experienced over quite a while as a Wisconsin deer hunter, as there's, I think, 600,000 of us or so. One of the challenges for people that use meat processors is getting their deer to a processor and figuring out how it's going to be, how you're going to order it. So if you've got prime cuts versus ground meat versus specialty products, and then basically you can only get so much out of a deer. And what I thought, we've built a lot of product configurators and things with Lannex, and why don't we build an ordering process and things for deer hunting? And we had an initial conversation, just kind of an off-the-cuff conversation with a processor as we were standing in line. And a lot of these lines, for people that haven't experienced them, can be half an hour long or so. People get frustrated because once you get up to the front of the line, you find out you don't know exactly what you want, or you don't remember what you ordered last time. And you'd really like to call your wife or something because she might have a different idea as to what you should be getting than what you do. And all the while, you have a bunch of increasingly upset people behind you. So, one of the challenges was, as we kind of off the cuff talked to this processor and said, hey, what about having an app for this, that would help you out with this? And the guy kind of looked down with sort of a scowl, and as he was looking at his carbonless paper and pen and everything, he's like, there's no way you could build something like that. And to us, we kind of looked at it as fighting words. So so that's sort of where the journey began, and that was about 4 years ago or so. And for the first couple of years, we just I wouldn't say I was really working actively on the idea or anything like that, but I was in the process of some other changes with our other business and everything, but the idea just kind of stood there. And the next couple of years, as we bumped into other processors and situations and stood in line again, we noticed nothing had really changed there. There was still the carbonless paper and the pen and everything. So what happened was in 2018, I kind of had the motivation to sort of make it real and everything. And that's really when we got things started. And there's kind of a number of different, I think, fairly interesting aspects to the whole thing. And one big part of our application is essentially a database that we built over about 1.5 years, which was created with with they're called field experience students, but basically it's students who act as interns from an organization called Shepherd's College down in Union Grove. And it's an organization that I volunteered with since 2016. And the purpose of the program is to teach special needs people technology and employable skills. So they actually have a technology program, a horticulture, and a culinary arts program. And these programs are all wonderful, but at the end of the day, people have to have meaningful work out of them. Otherwise, it doesn't really accomplish anything. So we kind of had the opportunity to host some field experience students in a workplace environment, and we've subsequently hired one of the students. But the task was to go through basically every county in every state in the U.S. and find wild game processors, because there wasn't a wild game processor database to be had. So we worked on that and assisted the program with that. And kind of as things kind of came into fall of 2018, we sort of thought, well, let's keep going with this thing, and let's flesh the database out a bit more. So we had put some spreadsheets together of about 2,500 processors altogether, and just for reference, there's probably about 15,000 in the U.S. So I mean, a fair number of processors, and anyway, we did 2,500 of them, and a lot of these processors don't have websites or don't have an online presence and that sort of a thing. So.
And so these were processors just in Wisconsin, or
they're actually all over the U.S. So it was it was really quite a project, and we were quite systematic about it. And we had probably 3 or 4 people at different times working on this project. So it was kind of fun though. But the students would actually come, and they'd be in our office and everything. They'd participate in our huddles, our daily huddles, that sort of thing. And really, we had just a ball with everyone, and it was a great way to support the program as well too. So.
Well, yeah, that's something I love, how you were able to combine something that's sort of a hobby or interest with your day job, which is really Lanix, the software development and website company, with the volunteer work you're doing with people with disabilities. I mean, that's an amazing winning combination to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, it was really a lot of fun, and we had never really seen people in action, and it's interesting because people are gifted in different ways and things, and some of the things that somebody that doesn't have a special need, something we might find boring or something is actually energizing to people. So, with special needs and special gifts and things. So they were able to very systematically kind of go through and knock through things and stuff. And it was great because we're able to support the program. And, additionally, we've got an employee that we hired out of it as well. So, and we're hoping to hire some more. So one of the things that we're looking at doing, and we're talking with some other startups right now, is one of the big challenges with startups is obviously building your software and things. So are there some ways we can work with startups as well as support the program at Shepherd's in respect to building out data and things like that? And I think there's kind of a winning combination there. So with Lanix, that's one of the things that I'm hoping to be working on over the next couple of years, is supporting the program, supporting startups, with data needs and development needs and things like that. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, that's really amazing. And so I do a lot of work with different entrepreneurial or startup groups in my region, in the New North, and pieces. And one of the challenges is how do you create more entrepreneurs? Like there are success stories and concepts which are really good. They get financed, they become a business or whatever. But how do you replicate that? How do you get more people into the game? And I really admire that now that you've kind of got this business that's getting off the ground, you're trying to figure out ways. Well, how do we help other businesses get off the ground too? And it's critically important we do that, because just the overall density of entrepreneurship in the state is not what it should be. And so it was one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you is, that you've created a standout concept, and it sounds like, it was something you developed over a period of years, maybe kind of gestating for a while as you were kind of thinking about it and turning it around in your head. And then it became sort of like a side gig, and now it's like becoming a, business in its own right, it sounds like.
That's right. It's kind of funny because, I had told my wife back in, I guess summer of 2019, because we had been working for a while on our branding and wireframes for the basic application. And, as we set up our LLC and everything, which is owned by the company that also owns Lanex. So we have a holding company, so kind of our own little ecosystem here and things. But I told my wife, I'm like, this kind of feels like a real thing now. And she's like, what is a real thing? And you start looking at what you're, kind of spending on, development and all these different, initiatives and things. And obviously it needs to, turn into something at some point in time. But, as time progressed and the database got further and further fleshed out, you could kind of start to see it forming up. And with Lanex, we were actually fortunate to be in Scale Up Milwaukee, which is a startup, or a growth accelerator actually in the Milwaukee area. We participated with Lanex, and then I happened to bump into Molly Dill, who's the director of gBeta down in Milwaukee, and I bumped into her at one of the Scale Up events, and I had known her through BizTimes because we had done the BizTimes website a number of years back with Lanex, and I had the pleasure of working with her and told her a little bit about what I was doing with Field to Freezer. And she said, well, we've got another cohort starting in the fall. Do you mind if I reach out to you at that point? So she did, and it was kind of funny because we had a Scale Up graduation. I think it was October 15th, and an hour and a half after we graduated Scale Up with Lanex, we wound up making a pitch to gBeta to get into that. So it turned out that there were 50 companies that applied, which I didn't realize at the time, and 5 got in, including Field to Freezer. So we sort of, it was sort of an interesting dichotomy between, Scale Up is designed to support, existing businesses and grow existing businesses of a particular revenue. And then you kind of have gBeta, which are a lot of cool ideas, but they're very early stage, almost pre-seed type, concepts and things like that. So, you've got some business, kind of gestating there and things, but it's, it's not necessarily revenue generating or anything yet. So it's like, all right, now I'm jumping from this program into this other one, and it's been a really interesting experience. But through the program, they have different mentors and investors and things like that they team you up with. And one of the mentors, who's a really nice guy from NML, actually, named Charles Johnson, and he said one of the challenges in the Milwaukee and Wisconsin areas, there aren't a lot of serial entrepreneurs. So kind of when somebody moves on from one job or gets one company spinning, they don't really have a vision for doing other things. And he said he'd like to see more of that type of thing in the future. And he was excited about what we're doing here, both with Lanex as well as kind of getting Field to Freezer off the ground. So kind of some neat conversations coming out of all of that.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point of view, and he sounds like a great guy, because I think from my experiences or some of the things that I've heard, that the difficulty with promoting that serial entrepreneurship is you need to create an environment where that is actually incented, and you need, which means you need a little bit of a risk tolerant environment, to work in it. And a lot of the investors that I run into claim to be, but they're really not very risk tolerant. So it's great to hear that there's somebody kind of thinking ahead like that, and doing that. I was going to ask,
Sure.
what was your experience kind of going through the gBeta cohort? Like, did you have much interaction with the other participants in the program? And
Oh yeah.
how long was it? Like for those who've never been a part of gBeta, can you
Sure.
maybe encapsulate the experience a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we basically hit the ground running, and it was definitely a 7-week sprint. So
Uh,
as we got into it, we kind of fleshed out a little bit more of our marketing message and things like that. And we were basically starting this program off at the end of October, and we had Wisconsin deer hunting coming up in November. And I had basically expected that 2020 was going to be the year that we launched anything, much less trying to fit something in 2019. And, a lot of the initial weeks and things like that are, different businesses are in different places. So everybody kind of had their own challenges. Maybe somebody had an app that was partially built already. Maybe somebody was looking for data. Maybe somebody needed connections and was kind of focused on, getting that financing going and things like that. So, I found that gBeta was wonderful for kind of meeting all of the cohort where they were at, basically. So kind of helping everyone in their own area. And we've worked with well, Pump Hero is a really interesting organization, and they're in our cohort, and they're building a system out for helping mothers find safe and secure places for like lactation rooms and things like that. So
sure.
they're building out an app and a database, and StyleQ is one for helping hairstylists and stylists fill up basically blank spots in their schedule. And then we've got another group from basically a team who all works for NML, who's setting up a program for helping find events at different venues and different modes of transportation into each one of the events. So in other words, if somebody wants to take the hop or a bike or something like that, it's kind of some alternative ways of getting from one place to another. And it's interesting because all these different businesses kind of had their own, little nuances and problems and things like that. But, really, really neat group of people. So what had happened with us was, as I was talking with Molly Dill, she said, well, when are you thinking of launching this thing? And I said, well, I figured it'd be a fall of 2020 thing. And she said, well, how about now? So, I'm like, well, we kind of have our database together. We've been working on it for a year and a half, but, I hadn't really gone through and reviewed a lot of the data. So what quality of data is it? Are there, errors in it? It doesn't quite have all of the relational aspects we were, hoping to have, but I talked to our development team at Lanix, and my oldest son, Max, is actually our kind of lead front-end developer here. And I'm like, hey, Max, old buddy, old pal, do you think you can build this, our minimally viable product in 3 weeks? And he said, well, he goes, I can do it. It's going to be a lot of late nights, but one thing I want you to promise me is don't make changes to it once I get started on it. So,
There you go.
which, if anybody's been involved in a web project before, it's like or any IT software project, you don't want to be making changes as you get into it. So, so anyway. We did get the thing launched, and then it was fairly interesting because we got a lot of press right leading up into the launch. We were actually in 5 different newspapers or online publications and 3 TV news reports. In fact, it was interesting because I had done an interview on Channel 6, Fox 6 here in Milwaukee, and it was kind of funny because they scheduled it for opening opening morning of deer hunting, and I thought, oh gosh, I guess I'm gonna have to, take one for the team or something here. So as I was, basically had my interview attire on, I had all my Blaze Orange outfits and stuff in the car and things. And then as I was heading out of town, I happened to see a Spectrum News Channel 1 van as I was getting gas, and I said, I said hi to the reporter there, and just started talking, and I said, do you want a story? She said, yeah, sure. So I wound up doing an interview in the gas station, to tell them a little bit about field defreezers. So it was, it's been a lot of fun. But what happened was, it was very interesting. As we architected the initial search tools and things, we used a strategy like similar to Zillow did with residential real estate. So basically, they made a landing page for every property in the US, and we effectively did the same thing for all of our meat processors in our database. So what happened is we launched the site with about 1,600 pages of meat processors, and then all of the news stories and periodicals and things linked back to our main website, which helped elevate our domain authority and things like that. So what happened was we wound up picking up a large amount of search engine traffic, and over the past several months, we've actually had 45,000 impressions in search results, several thousand users, and our site is becoming kind of the authoritative site in the U.S. It's the largest online for-purpose meat processor database out there. So it's kind of interesting. So as we look at our whole business plan and everything, it's really kind of taken off as we were expecting, and things generally don't work like you expect. So
it's a refreshing surprise.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a great message in there for would-be entrepreneurs to realize that there are niches out there to be filled.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a tendency to think, oh, everything's already out there on the web. Well, it's not. And it's a matter of finding, whatever thing you happen to consider yourself nerdy about, right? And it's like hunting and processing, and and it's a matter of being so deeply into that space that you get where there's a need, and you see that nobody's tried to fill it yet, and you end up creating something unique and valuable.
Yeah, it's interesting because, what I was able to determine, there were a lot of challenges kind of in this wild game industry. And it's interesting because the technical term is wild game and custom cuts. So anything involving domesticated animals like beef and pork and, sheep, things like that, there's USDA regulation. But the for processors that process beef and domesticated animals, there's a different level of it as opposed for a custom cuts processor versus somebody that's basically taking in hundreds of cattle constantly for to be used in some processed food or something like that. So it's interesting because I think a lot of people kind of dismiss this whole area or specialty as they say, well, that's a niche market or something like that. So they kind of discounted it and things. And, it was interesting, we found out that this industry has, there's kind of an older generation that's starting to pass their businesses on to younger people and things. And a lot of the younger people are a lot more open to this technology and things. So while you have the older guy that, kind of frowned and said that can't be done, you've got the younger people saying, hey, why aren't we doing this? And, we've seen a lot of different types of things. Effectively, our competitors in the market from a search engine perspective, there's not really anything out there that's doing or is going to do what we're planning. But, we're competing with manual processes. We're competing with people that might have a spreadsheet or something, and that's kind of how they work. Or there are a couple of archaic I would say, software packages out there that that are very limited in scope, and they're built, say, with Microsoft Access. I mean, it's not like you're, buying an ERP package or something like that exists now. So as we got out and started to meet with processors and things, it was interesting because, people are like, we think the concept of your app is great. And the concept basically, I mean, in a nutshell, as it was initially envisioned, is we want to provide an interface for hunters to specify how their animals are going to be processed before they get to a processor. So you don't have to wait in line for half an hour. You wind up providing a QR code to participating processors, and they scan your order, take your animal, and you're out of there. So it's, your down payment, all of that sort of thing can happen, in advance. And it's been interesting because what we did was, from this initial database that we had put together, we refined it down to about 1,500 entries, and that's what we launched the site with. And that database of 1,500, we wound up doing a mailing to them in mid-December, and we had a gigantic response. In fact, we kind of had some fun with it. We made a greeting card called Seasons Meetings, and and we had our logo is basically a deer that has, it kind of looks like it's parted out, sort of. There's kind of some cutting diagrams and things like that. So we had that on the front of the card, and we put it in a blaze orange envelope, and we did a couple of screenshots of the wireframes that we had put together for the app, and sent all that out. And we had, I'd never seen anything like it. We had processors left and right contacting us. We had people contacting us on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and they're like, we need to find out more about this, and, we're interested in it. So all that being said, I'm really glad that we filed for a patent on the process at the beginning of September, because it was pretty clear there wasn't anything out there, like this. So,
Wow.
so it was kind of neat. So what we did was as we got into this year, we set up, we called them meetings. Again, just having a little bit of fun. So I can spell meeting correctly, but we were calling them meetings. And our goal was to go out and meet with processors in different parts of the country. So we discovered that there's very different needs between the northern processors, and I would count Wisconsin and Iowa, and processors up our way. Obviously in that group, from southern processors versus western processors. So our initial goal was really to get something together for deer hunting, and kind of what it's expanded into is basically it's going to be an ERP package for wild game processors. So not only will it have the app for the hunters, but we'll be building an order entry system, or I should say we are building an order entry system that allow processors to get rid of their pen and paper and things like that, and put all of their notes, all the intake information, follow an order through processing, provide cutting instructions and things for the people that are doing cutting. It'll have information for people that are preparing the specialty products, which are things like sausages, jerky, things that require smoking, and kind of some extra work there. So we'll be putting all of that together. And then on the tail end of it, we'll be doing an automated voice call, text message, and email, of course, when an order is complete. So that takes a lot of this manual process out of the processor's hands. So it's really going to be a huge time saver for processors as they look to implement this. So, but it was very interesting getting out and meeting with some real processors and stepping through their systems and, what's important to them. And we've really met some just really awesome people that have, taken a lot of time with us. And, it's been interesting because, the thing we've heard most often is, what can we do to help you get this thing online? This is going to it's going to be a game changer for our industry. It's probably a pun in there somewhere.
Sure, sure. Well,
And yeah, a lot of different cool things going on, which we've sort of pivoted to. So what we really were doing was we were looking initially to solve a symptom of the problem and not the underlying problem itself. So as we got in and said, oh, okay, well, there is a need for this, it's just people have discounted as a niche industry. You may not have had the right support organizationally and all this, now it's kind of like everything's coming together, which is really exciting for us.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great concept. It sounds like you've brought it to market in a smart way. You're helping both the processors and the hunters, get it some essential things faster and better than they were before. And it sounds like you've got a bright future with what you've set up there. So now, if somebody wants to go check out or learn more about how Field Freezer works, where do they go?
Sure. They can visit our website, which is fieldtofreezer.com, and feel free to inquire off of our contact us form, and myself or someone else will get back to them, real quickly and things. So I've been essentially laying low a little bit over the past couple of weeks or so. We had actually driven almost 5,000 miles this year so far in all of our meetings and things. So between and I intentionally haven't contacted some Wisconsin processors, but we do have introductions to them primarily because down south they have a very extended hunting season. So they still had their gun deer season going and things like that. So we wound up going down to Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina, and then we're back for a week, and then went out to Iowa and visited 3 processors there, as well as one in Colorado. So it was, so it's kind of like now we have all this data, we've got to process it, and basically if you looked at our whiteboard at Lannex, we've got basically one whiteboard that's a whole wall, and it's completely filled with diagrams, and then another one has our workflow for our ordering process and things like that. So, now we'll be really reaching out to processors again as we look to getting this thing launched toward the end of July, early August is really what we're shooting for. So we can start to do some beta testing through bow hunting season, be ready to scale for Wisconsin gun deer season and things like that. But right now we're either talking directly or have introductions to 77 processors. So we have a huge, opportunity here and everything. That, really the question is, how much can we tackle this, this first year and everything like that. So we want things to go smoothly and, want to be strategic about it.
Well, it sounds like you're approaching it in a very smart way, and thank you for taking some time to share your journey with us about this whole thing, because I think it's such a useful thing to have other entrepreneurs think, hear this story and kind of think about how some of the lessons that you've learned along the way, maybe applying to what they're trying to do as well. So I really appreciate it. I had just one more question before we get off. Who is this guy behind you? And why is he wearing so many hats?
Yeah, well, this deer actually had been in my my grandparents' basement for a long time, and they had some land up in Presque Isle, and after Grandma and Grandpa had passed away, and the estate was settled, everybody's kind of like, well, what are we going to do with this deer? And people had put a bow around him for for Christmas and things like that, and it's been kind of a family joke and everything. Well, my son-in-law just got I think last year got an 11-point, a really nice deer and everything, and they were moving and had just got a new apartment, and they're like, well, we don't want him anymore. So I'm like, well, I'll take him back. I can't really get rid of him and things. So we have a second conference room at Lannex, so we just thought we'd joke around a little bit and stick a Field to Freezer hat on him. And then I've got one from a processor in northwestern or southwestern Iowa, and then I've got a cool generator hat as well.
Nice,
So,
nice.
so I figure we'll just kind of build it out as we get more processor hats and things like that, but have a little bit of fun here anyway.
Fantastic. That's great. That's great. Well, Matt, thanks again for your time on this. We'll look forward to following your story as it continues to develop. And in the meantime, on behalf of BizStarts, I wish you all the best.
Oh, my pleasure. And yeah, if I can ever be of assistance to any, other entrepreneurs or anything like that, feel free to reach out. Mentoring and everything's an important part of who I am and we are and things like that. And I appreciate organizations like yours that are helping drive this community forward in Wisconsin. So thanks very much, Todd.
All right, great. Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.